Folks, welcome back to Reality Check with Arvind Swaminathan. Or should I say, Ram Ramji? Well, I'm Indian, I tell you. Well, a lot has been happening. We held back deliberately for this time because so much has happened in the last few days. With what? With the arrest of Mr. Kejriwal, Chief Minister of Delhi. We had a look into his background. And boy, was it an eye-opener. It also tells you the modus operandi. You remember last year I did a couple of videos on the Adani saga and one on George Soros, the project Take Over India, as he tried to take over and probably did take over Burma, now Myanmar. He had his UPA government in power for 10 years. He must have been happy. Well, I warned then that there were going to be many, many more attacks. And here's some of them surfacing. What is Mr. Kejriwal's background? He said in one of these interviews, he joined the Inland Revenue Service, that's the Income Tax Department. Now, whether it was central government or government of Delhi, I'm not quite sure, but one of these. In 2000, he formed an NGO called Sampurna Parivartan, usually referred to as Parivartan. Now, where did he get funds for that? Would you believe the Ford Foundation? Now, all this while he was still an employee of the government in the income tax department, which in itself is an illegal thing to do. He's not supposed to be doing that. And to take money from a foreign agency, that's just not done. Now this went on 2004. He became an Ashoka member. What is the Ashoka? It's something run by the Ford Foundation and possibly George Soros' Open Society Foundation, which in itself ought to tell you something. 2002, of course, the Ford Foundation directly started funding Sampurna, which should be noted. I'll explain why in a few minutes. Now, having become an Ashoka Fellow, next step, Magsaysay Award, 2006. Why? What had he done that was so great to warrant a Magsaysay Award? As far as we know, nothing. So why was he given this? And who funds it? Would you believe the Ford Foundation? And possibly the Rockefeller Foundation too. That's not all. Around, 2006? No, 2008. He started receiving funds from Tatas and Infosys, 25 lakh rupees each per year. Now, the Tatas have said that they stopped funding him from 2011 onwards, but they haven't shown any evidence of that. No proof. They say they have, but we don't know. The jury is still out on that. 2014, he starts off something else. Somewhere around 2007-8, he started off another NGO. This one was called Kabir. Now, Kabir was funded directly via Aid India. Aid India was funded by Ford Foundation. Kabir also had its offices in the same building as Amnesty International, also funded to a large extent by Ford Foundation. Now 2014 onwards, of course, our friend takes off into politics. He gets elected in 2015, again in 2020, another election due in 2025. I'm talking about Delhi elections. Now you see, this has been something which a lot of people refuse to believe. When I mentioned this, from about 1970 until about 1985, the Ford Foundation had become a front for the CIA. Many declassified references from the US government have proven that the CIA used organizations like the Ford Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation, USAID, Peace Corps for these information gathering projects. And it's not just information gathering. They used to make maps of every district where these people went. All your water courses, your roads, your railways, where there were bridges, where there were monsoon bridges only. Anything like it. What was the cropping pattern? What is the kind of, how shall I put it, cost of living there? What was the standard of living of the people there, and so on. Now we may not think very much of all this, but all this is gathering of information for use later. One of the things they always did was to home in on people whom they thought they could build up, develop as their assets. They could give them recognition by foreign awards, Magsaysay Award, among others. This was usually the first step. If he was still controllable, a few more. If not, he'd be sidelined for minor roles. Here's another example of that. And unfortunately, who do you think gave them the blueprint for this? Guilty as charged. They gave them this blueprint in 1970, before I realized. And it wasn't until a few months later that I realized what the game was. That's when I found. You see, I used to be working on their high-yielding varieties program when they brought in IR8 and things like this, high-yielding varieties. Going around the districts, I found that all the recommendations were wrong. And when I tried to tell them, look, why don't we correct it? I got into trouble. And a few months later, of course, my contract was not renewed. Because I was rather adamant that those recommendations must change. Because had they remained as they were, 80% of the small farmers in this country would have been bankrupt. Or they would have just plainly have lost their land. Where would they have gone? Such is the backing for Mr. Kejriwal. Remember, they started nurturing him from 2000 onwards. 2015 he gets elected as the Chief Minister of Delhi. It's a long-term project. Build him up. Hopefully one day they were hoping he'd be Prime Minister. Now you think this is not the first one. There were two earlier examples, except they had much bigger awards. People like M.S. Swaminathan, Dr. Kurian, all assets. But who were their real advisors? usually Ford Foundation and Ford Foundation staff. Now, very few people know this. I know it because I know the system and I know the way they work, having been in it for a while and having rumbled their rather nefarious schemes. They didn't like it. And yet nobody here believed me. Now it's beginning to come out in the open. I got into trouble because one day I got so mad. I asked him point blank, "Are you doing the CIA's work for it?" And I said, "He didn't renew my contract." Here's a person who's been getting money not only from that. 2014, he also went to the US and met Mr. Pannu. You know, the Khalistan person? And accepted $16 million, which I'm told is about 133 crore rupees. Why? Because he promised to get one Professor Buller released immediately. To which effect, Mr. Kejriwal also wrote to the President of India. You remember, shortly afterward, after meeting Mr. Pannu, this man became Chief Minister of Delhi. And he was trying to get Professor Buller released. Fortunately, the man is still in prison. And Mr. Pannu in the US is getting annoyed because, look, we gave you money to have him released. He's still behind bars. What's going on? So, when you say you want a free and fair trial for this man, why? Who are the US administration to interfere in Indian affairs or matters which concern only India? Both the government of India and the judiciary in India. Why are they say, don't cross the red line. What about the US? Are you telling me they've never crossed that red line? Have you forgotten Mossadegh? Have you forgotten Patrice Lumumba in the Congo? Have you forgotten the South Vietnamese president? Was it Diem? Have you forgotten Saddam Hussein and President Gaddafi? I kept telling people, I'm still telling people, NATO, for instance, is never designed to help Western Europe. No. It is designed to protect America, nobody else. It will break and destroy Western Europe because of the weaponry they have to keep supplying people like Ukraine. Where will they get replacements? The US. They laugh all the way to the bank. Same thing with Israel and the Arab world. There is no Hamas. The whole idea is to kill as many Palestinians as possible. They won't come back. Now you understand the way they work. Here, find an intelligent sort of person. And make no mistake, Kejriwal knows a lot of the ins and outs. That is why it's difficult to find that money trail. It takes time. And it takes a lot of hard work and a lot of foot slogging. Because having been part of the income tax services, he knows what they look for during a raid. Everything about how to conduct a raid, when it is done, how it is done, where do they look, what do they look for, and the threads and the trails that they have to keep following. There are so many Hawala operations and so many shell companies involved. It's going to take a little while. Now just claim that, why at this time there's an election? Well, he was summoned in October. It's been going on since then. Why did he not turn up before this? Why did he have to be arrested? The ED arrested him on the recommendation of the High Court. They just wanted him for questioning then. So why? What was he doing all this time? Planning all this. All the things he was going to do to get sympathy from the public. Oh, the BJP is doing this, that and the other to me. And me, I'm a nice guy. I only think about you. Apparently, what Atishi comes out and says, he's still thinking of the people of Delhi. He's told her apparently, make sure that people of Delhi get water. May I ask him the same question? Why now? What were you doing for 4 years before this? Nobody lived in Delhi? Huh? Where was their water supply? Why weren't you bothered then? You see, Mr. Kejriwal, when you run out of ideas like this, especially when you're kept away from your foreign handlers, you've got to come up with a whole lot of answers, none of which you can get anywhere close to. That's why you get bothered. Now the sympathy way, oh, you're so bothered about the people of Delhi. And then you comment on the CAA. All these pouring in from Pakistan and Bangladesh. What are you talking about? Hardly 30 or 40,000. And say, oh, there will be an unemployment problem. There will be a crime problem. But you never thought about the crime problem and the unemployment problem when you brought in about 2 million Bangladeshis and Rohingyas into Delhi. Spread out all over Delhi. They've literally taken over household chores and things like this in many colonies. Or do you want Delhi to forget the wave of terror which, what was it called? The Kacha Banyan gang. You know what a Kacha is? The cut-off pyjamas which a lot of people wear as shorts or as underwear and a vest. These guys would come in from Bangladesh just wearing those. They would live under the flyover near Medical Institute or Dola Kuan or such places. Night time was for them the greatest. They would go out and rob, and they left no witnesses. Wherever they robbed, there were a lot of dead people, usually with their heads smashed, using hammers and things like this. You want us to go through that terror again? So why did you not send these Bangladeshis back as you should have? Because they're all illegal migrants. Why are you aiding and abetting them? That in itself is a criminal act, and it must be looked at, and you have to be answerable. You have to answer to those questions. Why did you bring them here? To change the demography of India and of Delhi? 2 million new voters? Or 2 million new people whom you can exploit to loot the people, the taxpayer of Delhi? This is what you're doing. They're also the same ones behind every riot, behind every disturbance anywhere in and around Delhi. We all know that. You know it too. Maybe that's why you brought them here. So don't try and tell me how wonderful you are. You're not. And it's about time you understood a few things. The people of Delhi are not all stupid. And I hope to give you a befitting reply everywhere in India. Because the Aam Aadmi Party is not only mixed up with foreign agencies like the Ford Foundation, which we know, and even the US government has admitted in disclosure that the CIA has been using the Ford Foundation as a front for decades, and it's still doing so. And you're hand in glove with Khalistanis. And there are somewhere on record a little talk you had with somebody that either you will be the Chief Minister of Punjab or the Prime Minister or the first Prime Minister of an independent country, meaning Khalistan. That's the kind of depraved mindset you have? And you're bothered about us? You expect us to believe that? Now, I'm not one who sort of talks about people like this just out of the out of the blue. It takes a while for me to form an opinion. Not just the Ford Foundation. I used to know people in Amnesty International also. And I know their mindset. Never once in those times did they ever say anything against American policy. They come down on India like 10 tons of bricks from a horrible great height, but never anything against the US. Not even at the height of Vietnam, nothing. You know why? Where were their funds coming from? A good chunk via the Ford Foundation. Well, try and get all this around you. The opposition or the Indie bloc, the Indie Alliance as they call themselves. What are they? Each one is a regional party, expecting the people to allow them to go on looting and plundering their states, either like a political Maharaja or like a colonialist or a colonial power. Because that's all they've been doing ever since they've been in power, looting. They keep talking about saving democracy. From what? From themselves? What about, you take West Bengal, Sandesh Khali, rape, murder, loot, destroying people's land by adding salt to it. Where was democracy then? Were you trying to save democracy then? From whom? When the Congress government, starting with Nehru, was giving away POK to Pakistan, Aksai Chin to China, Cocoa Islands to Burma, Kachativu under Indira Gandhi to Sri Lanka. For what? Did that improve relations? Did we get anything for it? No. So you give away our land. And what are these others trying to do? Each one is a different country. This is what they're trying to do. Maharajas and kings of their, or sultans of their own countries. I am not amused, believe me. Because that's what they're trying to do. Nehru has been trying, so has the Congress party been trying desperately to turn India into an Islamic country. I've explained this in earlier videos. All the laws they've made. You can't teach Hinduism anywhere. You can teach Islam and Christianity. The Waqf Act 1995, the Places of Worship Act 1991. Isn't that enough? The Hindu Civil Code 1956. Nobody else has a civil code. Why not Muslims? If they are citizens of this country, why is there not a uniform civil code for them, where all of us are concerned? All of us should come under it. And when the CAA comes up, those same Bangladeshis, all illegal migrants start creating havoc at the instigation of those local regional people. Why? If the Congress party comes back in power, what is the next thing they'll do? Give up Arunachal Pradesh to China? What about Assam and West Bengal? Bangladesh or China? Or what about POK? That becomes permanently part of Pakistan? What else can you give away? Why? Smaller and smaller units of India. India just shrinks. If you're not capable of managing India as it is and getting back our lands, Maybe you don't deserve to be in power ever again, because you let us down so horrendously. It's not funny anymore. Please keep those foreign people out. We don't need them. The Ford Foundation has been planning this for decades. My request to you is, do not let them succeed. And people like George Soros, well, I can tell you where they should be. How about by the Titanic? Maybe that's where they belong. We don't need them here, thank you. And anybody who tries to disturb or mess about with this country of ours, I wish them all the worst ever possible. We do not interfere in the internal matters of other countries. Why can't they leave us alone? Why do they have to try making us fight among ourselves? Why do they have to try making us loot our own people so that you can loot us all over again? Europe has nothing. America has petered out totally. Why can't you sit down at home and start earning a living instead of looting other countries? And please, I hope anybody who tries to take over this country, send him back with a bee sting in his ear, a whole lot of them. Maybe that's the only way they learn. Do not ever allow them to establish here in our country, because the next time we may never be able to shake them off. Clear warning. George Soros and the Ford Foundation are not required. You see, the CIA through the Ford Foundation, how far and wide. The International Rice Research Institute in the Philippines, set up and funded by Ford Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation. Now you think of what they did. You send out wrong information. How many millions of farmers are bankrupt? How many people starve to death because there isn't enough to food? That's when you, the US, starts controlling their breadbasket, their tummies. So then, oh, please give us food. They beg for it. When you're the people who destroyed their income, their food source. It's not funny anymore, folks. So please don't allow them to get a foothold again. Foothold, not even a toehold. Because these are the people who come up and butter you up to begin with, build you up as demigods, knowing that you're useless. You're not fit for anything. And yet, you're the gods. They keep trying to tell us that Hinduism is no good. Why? It's the only democratic religion there is. All the other Abrahamic religions are dictatorial. There's only one way. The only one which grants you leeway is Hinduism. And you talk about democracy? Even your worshipping style is no longer democratic if you do away with Hinduism. Because the others are all dictatorial. This way or else. And we've known that, whether it's Islam or Christianity, we've suffered. And if we still don't wake up, there's something wrong with us. And we're still having to hear these other opposition parties saying that we in India are no good, we can't do anything. Now this BJP government has taught us we can. Yes, we can. And we're proving that to the rest of the world. We don't have to prove it to anybody. They're beginning to understand that, look, the brain drain has been cut, the brains stay here. All the help you had or looting from us has been in the form not only of goods, but especially brains. Because our future is being compromised. We're not able to go forward because Congress parties in the past have driven out those brains. Trained brains. Brains with experience. Whether it's medical, pure sciences, medical or space scientists, you name it, any kind of science. Indian brains used to be pretty good. Except we were told they're no good until they go over there. Then they're wonderful. Even today, we're told there's unemployment. Why? Because all these opposition parties have brought in 60 to 70 million Bangladeshis. Million, not 1 or 200 or a couple of 100,000. Somewhere between 60 and 70 million of them. Now once the CAA comes into being, a lot of these are going back. Many on their own, some are going to be fished out and taken and sent back. What does that do? It gives our own Indian citizens employment. Because these guys, they come in here, they undercut everything and everybody else and go in at much lower wages. Plus, they come in and change the demography. They're not all in one place, they spread out all over the place. And they start conversions. There are different ways. So please, do not allow these monsters to take over. We have one very good chance now. Do you want progress or do you want us to go backwards into time? Back into the Hindu-Muslim rioting. The youth is pretty charged up. They want to go forward. Don't drag them back. And you youngsters, get up off your behind and vote. And make sure you vote for the right people. Do not vote for these indie bloc monsters. You know what will happen if they do come. Should they ever take over, I feel very sorry for this country. You see all the things that the BJP government has done in 10 years. Internet everywhere. Connectivity. There's almost 100,000 or 150,000 kilometers of new roadways, expressways, connectivity, fast travel. The defense services. We make our own weapons and weapon systems. The West is very annoyed. We don't buy from them. They have to buy from us now. And we're exporting some of these weapon systems, like BrahMos. You think of that. While Article 370 was enforced in Kashmir, was there any democracy? Did you try and save democracy then? When we had to import all our defense needs, where were we getting the money to pay for them? And he said, no, this government has brought us a whole lot of debt. That debt goes back years, decades, to pay for what we bought then. And you didn't allow any development here? All these opposition people just want to hold everybody back. Why? You buy everything from abroad and you swallow up commissions. huge amounts in foreign banks, foreign countries. That is then invested abroad to help them. It doesn't do us any good. As Rajiv Gandhi, was it, in one of his election campaigns said, everybody knows that 10 or 12 paisa, or only 10 or 12 paisa out of every rupee that we send actually gets to the project. Where did the other 85 or 87 paisa go? Into somebody's pocket? And from there, hawala abroad. Our tax money was going abroad via the pockets of certain officials. And he vowed, maybe we'll try and get 30 paisa there. Instead of 15 or 10 or 15, we'll try and get 30 paisa there. He still wanted 70 in his pocket. Could you get more blatant than that? He was actually telling us that out of every rupee we're going to put 70 in our own pockets. And nobody heard? I mean, come on, let's wake up. Wakey, wakey, rise and shine. Keep foreigners out of here. Allow us to develop. Bring up our children in such a way that they develop mentally as well as physically. To be able to do things in this country. The climate is right. Let's not spoil it. Whatever else, the choice is yours. Do you want to develop and go forward and hold your head up high in the world? Or do you want to go back into the old apologetic Indian syndrome and the usual Hindu-Muslim? The choice is yours. Well, folks, have a good think. If you like, subscribe, send to your friends, your groups, your relatives, everywhere. And please click on the video link, not just on the frame, the video link. That way we'll get some feedback. Well, I hope Mr. Kejriwal stays where he is, because that's where he belongs. He is not only, whether he gets convicted on Liquorgate or anything else, I don't know. But he certainly committed treason. And I mean treason of the worst kind. By allowing foreign agencies to infiltrate into our echelons of power. I don't like that. And as an electorate, or as a member of the electorate, or as a voter, you shouldn't like it either. Because that means going back to colonialism with us as the slaves. Don't ever allow that to happen. Sorry, Ram Ramji.